Caesar, this is the Global Digest think tank group. I see you have a lot of good profile. You have a lot of experience in UN and other international UN department, right?
Yeah,
So,
correct.
what are you doing right now? Why don't you briefly introduce?
I retired a couple of years ago from UN
Right.
after 30 years of service. I am doing consultancies, I'm doing presentations, I'm doing panels, I'm doing podcasts. So I am quite active in the academic and think tank world. And most recently, while I was in Vietnam, I was a guest lecturer at Vietnam National University and also at the Hanoi International Schools on international business. And in the school, I was doing classes on international relations. So the different parts of the world, they called me, look, Cesar, can you do a talk to the students about South America or about the Sahel or about the Middle
Right.
East, about Pakistan. So, I mean, it was like that. So I am open to, I think I have a very good vision of many regions in the world. I've worked in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe. So four continents, sound experience of. I am Canadian too. I've been to Burma a couple of times in better moments. I am following the situation there. I've been there twice. My last visit was in 2017. I went there with my son, and now the country is at the risk of dismembering, no, because all these groups and regions, no, and minorities that want to find their own fate. They don't believe in a united Burma. The Union of Burma is not that much of a union anymore.
So
And of
the
course,
thing is, they don't believe me. The authority in charge let not believe them. They make difficult situation or very hard living for the people that may wasn't. Otherwise, if Burma is prosperous and very peaceful, nobody will be,
yeah,
want to be separate. Nobody want to fighting. But
yeah,
the leadership has 70 years, they did not make any significance productives, You
yes,
imagine 70 years is a very long time. They may have many reasons within 70 years. There should be something significant productive, That is the thing. The people are arguing with the leadership because leadership has seriously something wrong that people are feeling right now.
yeah. That is terrible. And of course, look at the neighborhood.
Maybe something you can also contribute to the project peacemaking, peace building in Burma. The project,
Well, that would be very important because look at the neighborhood. All the countries around Burma are very prosperous, and Burma used to be the most prosperous country 50, 70 years ago.
right?
Was the richest, most developed, the best education system, and now look, it's far behind, and many of the neighboring countries are taking advantage of of Burma's calamities in order to make their own business flourish.
Right.
So, and that is a problem.
How do you think UN point of view how there is a way for peace building because usually UN Security Council has deadlock, because
Yeah,
power has
the,
different uh, they have view on Burma, so always deadlock and UN majority, UN National Assembly may support for democracy peace building in Burma, but the legally decision is UN Security Council. So
yeah.
uh, with UN Security Council or without UN Security Council, what limitation we can cooperate with UN for peace because there are a lot of innocent bombing and artillery and killing 100,000 of innocent. So that is a peace troop can enter Burma. Apart from peace troop, other role because the other role, human right council. So that ICC role, UNSC role, it seem not much hopeful in this mechanism. And other thing
Yeah.
is we can organize UN without directly UN participation with other. So how did
Mhm.
you see? Because you have a lot of experience in UN.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a bit of my background. My name is
Yes,
Cesar
please.
Guedes. I was born in Lima, Peru. I'm also Canadian by marriage. So, but I have spent 30 years with the United Nations. My background is I studied business administration in University of Lima, and I have a master's degree in international relations and development from the International Institute of Social Studies, ISS, in The Hague, which is part of Erasmus University in the Netherlands. I speak 6 languages,
Oh my God,
English,
very
French,
great.
Spanish, Portuguese, German, Latin, uh, and um, and French, obviously. I live on the French side of Canada in the province of Quebec. Well, after my 30 years with the UN, I retired. My last position was as country director in Afghanistan, in Kabul, and I was there during the collapse of the government and the meltdown of the whole Afghan apparatus and the falling into the hands of the Taliban. So I started my career very, very young as a UN volunteer. I was a UN volunteer dealing with, given my business background, dealing with privatization of state-owned companies in Guyana. It's a small country in the Caribbean, which has recently discovered a lot of oil and is supposed to be one of the richest countries in the
I
world.
see.
But when I was there, it was one of the poorest. That's why uh, um, the UN was called to stabilize and help the economic revamping of the country. So after my time in Guyana, I was selected to become a JPO, a junior professional officer, and I went to serve in Beijing, China, covering China and North Korea. For the United Nations Industrial Development Organization. I spent 3 years in that position. And then onwards, I went with UNDP, the UN Development Program, to Lima, Peru, where I worked in a large project dealing with restructuring of the state apparatus in Peru. After that, I got a new assignment, an international one, and I went to Bonn, Germany, at UN Volunteers headquarters. UN Volunteers is part of UNODC, of the UN Development Program. I was in charge of exactly what we are discussing, peace initiatives, dialogue, in different parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. I was in charge of that portfolio, Latin America and the Caribbean. So one of the big components was about the peace building in Guatemala, with the participation of UN volunteers, mainly specialists in human rights, to try to implement the peace accords that ended the long civil war in Guatemala that was one of the bloodiest in Latin America. From then, I was selected to go to Vienna, Austria, as head of the Latin America department at UNODC, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, and I was in charge of overseeing with a team the portfolio in various countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. After a few years, I was elected as country director for Bolivia. So I left Vienna and I went to La Paz, Bolivia. Bolivia is the third largest producer of cocaine in the world.
I
From
see.
there, I went to Pakistan, Islamabad, as country director. I spent there 6.5 years, covering one of the largest portfolios of UNODC. and very connected to the work of Afghanistan, the work in Afghanistan, Iran, and the Central Asian republics, given that the main problem there was the production of drugs in Afghanistan, especially opium. And
Right.
from Pakistan, I went to Africa, to Mozambique, to open the newest UNODC office, because Mozambique was experiencing a big upsurge in drug trafficking
Yes.
and also Islamic radicalization. One sector of the population of Mozambique are Muslims, and then they were connected to drug trafficking rings, unfortunately, and this was being used to destabilize the country. I spent there 3 years and left a very healthy new operation, and a colleague took over, and the good work continues. Given my job in Mozambique, I was promoted and I went to Afghanistan for almost a year. And then, well, what happened? Unfortunately, the government collapsed and the Taliban took over. And from then, I took my retirement. I went to Vietnam, Hanoi, where I was engaged in a number of activities with two universities, the Diplomatic Academy, the International School, providing all the students with special lectures and presentations about different topics. So that's a little bit of my background.
Not a
So
little
John,
bit,
back
it's
to you.
very huge background. So, and as I already told you, as with your huge experience, how did you see a way or a pathway for peace building in Burma or Myanmar in this
I
uh,
would,
in this
I would, yes.
complicated background?
Well, you see, in diplomacy, the last thing you lose is hope. Yeah, so we should avoid, as everybody wants to see the country moving forward, to have less of confrontation and try in a best possible way from within first to calm down. No, there's a lot of animosities, a lot of hatred, a lot of violence. I mean, dialogue cannot continue if this spiral of violence is ongoing and it's getting worse. Remember, it is not only about the junta and how much they have taken political and economic power and the misuse of the very rich natural resources, mineral resources of Burma. There's also the issue of minorities, the current minority,
Right,
Shan minority, different groups that really want to have a state within the state. They don't believe in the national federal rule of the junta. Then you have the Rohingya crisis, which has really raised up the eyebrows of many countries of how these people are being treated. So it's one crisis after the other.
right,
And very important also frictions with the neighboring countries because of refugees, because of contraband, because of illicit activities with Thailand, with Bangladesh, with Laos, things that need to be stabilized. So on that front, the UN has tried on a few occasions. Unfortunately, not so long ago, even the resident coordinator and high-level officials were expelled from the country. No, and this is really not helping because the junta has really closed themselves into a dark room, and they don't want dialogue. It's very difficult to penetrate them. We have the special rapporteurs of the UN that have also assessed how difficult, how dire the situation in Burma is. But anyway, without that very green panorama, it is important also to send messages of goodwill dialogue. And on that role, I think some NGOs can really help to try to pave the ground together with the UN to open different, probably not really the bigger door, but some windows, some smaller doors to agree on things that all sides can agree. And the most important thing that everybody can agree is to stabilize the country and bring peace. Uh, the problem is that the junta has found an infinite level of wealth by misusing the resources of Burma. And they are using that as their own personal wallet and their families. I mean, whereas the 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 normal population are suffering tremendously,
Right.
these guys are being richer than the richest. On one point, I would say they cannot continue because that situation is not sustainable. And you have to see also the role of big neighboring powers like China, in which China has to play a role, a decisive role, in trying to stabilize Burma because their plans for the One Belt, One Road, the connections with China, the exports, and all of that can suffer if a key component of that puzzle of the One Belt, One Road in Southeast Asia, which is Burma, is not being used properly and is not being governed by a democratically elected government or that has a stabilized government and that people are willing to work and that people are free and people are not afraid. So on that front, China has really to play a stronger role and look less at their own interests and look also what is important for the Burmese people. And on that front, this is a key point. And China has a strong foot in the Security Council, is one of the vetoing powers. So they have to really go together with the other P4, P5 countries to really agree on the basics and bring dialogue to the country. Okay, having said that, I would say we need to reshuffle the UN operations in Burma and concentrate mainly, obviously there's a humanitarian crisis, that work should continue, but high-level UN officials experience in peacemaking, in peace building, in dialogue have to be sent. It has to be an open approach, not getting to confrontations. We know that the junta is bad, but I mean, I have also dealt with in difficult governments, difficult situations. And of course, but the agenda is much bigger than the problems. So the country, Burma, is much bigger than the problem. So therefore, we need to concentrate on what is beyond the problem, what is the future, what are the prospects, and bring people that have the capacity to really try to bring key members of the junta for a dialogue, try to wind down gradually a new process. Let's also bring in the opposition so that it's less confrontational, is more engaging, that everybody has their own agenda. Every party has their own vision. But especially if you are dealing with a de facto government that is hardly being recognized by anybody, you need also to bring them into the table, but also thinking about an exit strategy for them. So in a way in which they can gradually relinquish power. And some of them who have not been members of the junta, that have not been connected to crimes of against humanity, can be sheltered in other countries. They can go into exile and leave the space for the Burmese people to chip in and start reconstructing the country. I think the key is dialogue, and for dialogue, you have to have the key persons, the key emissaries that are able to stomach all these problems and still persist in the way to peace. I think nothing is being obtained by the use of violence and arms. We have seen for the last 4 years nothing is happening because
Right.
nobody's putting the efforts. And Burma has dropped down for the international agenda. Now everybody talks about Ukraine, about Sudan, about Palestine, about Gaza, about other emerging crises,
Right.
and then Burma is left there, And unfortunately, what I see is that the neighboring countries to Burma, ASEAN countries, have to play a stronger role. It's not business as usual. You cannot keep a flourishing ASEAN community if one of the members, perhaps one of the strongest members, one of the largest countries with the largest potential, such as Burma, is being left away on the burner to
Right.
to and this is what I see, John.
Right.
Dialogue, inclusion, persistence, and also using all the power of the UN. I mean, there are many other crises, but this one is important for uh, a key part of the world. It's neighboring to one of the P5 countries. Is the backyard of China. This cannot be kept like that. So I think China has a role, Thailand has a role, ASEAN Secretariat has a role, India has a role.
Sure.
Yeah. And obviously Bangladesh in trying to tame down the crisis with the refugees, the Rohingyas. And last but not least, I would bring in Indonesia, the one of the most important emerging powers of the region, the largest Muslim country
Right.
in the world. I mean, they have to play a role also about how to help Burma with a Rohingya minority.
Right. So, according to UN system, UN protocol, as you said, the country director was expelled by the military government. Also, they did not allow and they did not engage with special rapporteur or UN special uh, advisor reporter. So each mean the military government is openly announced they rejected the UN system, UN protocol, all these things. Then how UN can consider how UN can consider Burma military government as they are disobeying government and how UN security can consider Burmese state that they are disobey or they did not follow international law and regulation. They did not follow UN system definitely. So what maximum level UN can consider, including UN Security Council?
Council. John, I believe on that front, the UN is not the UN itself. The UN are all the countries of the world. When we think about the UN, sometimes we think it's about an institution, but what is at the core of that institution are 193 member states, each one with a specific power. So therefore, the UN does what the member states instruct the secretariat and the staff to do. It's not that the UN can act independently without a mandate, without an instruction. And then I would go back to the source. Which is the source of the UN? The member states, the countries. So what we need is a strong lobby power, of key actors like governments, leaders in Burma, leaders of opinion, NGOs, and that can go and talk to key members of the UN. China is a key member. Neighboring countries. So if you talk to them on a one-to-one and try to bring a common agreement, then under that level of pressure, because also the junta can act under pressure. They are not going to say no to China. Yeah. I mean, they are not going to say no to India. There is, I mean, countries, member states like the ones I mentioned, have to do the leverage. They have to put their foot down, no, because the junta can just not ignore what the big neighbors can say. But the beauty of this, John, is if these neighbors come together on an agreement, because you can have a Thai position, you can have a Indian position, you can have a Chinese position, but if you all bring them together, putting the problems of Burma at the center and saying,
So
look, this cannot continue,
those,
this and also offering a way out to the juntas so that there's a transition. And
right,
also it has to be gradual, because if it's something like black and white from one extreme to the other, the junta is not going to agree, and also the leaders of the opposition, which could be very pushy because they are right, but they would not have a chance if they are too pushy. So
I
it
mean,
has to be a good balance.
those neighboring thing is alternative pathway. The first UN mandate, was not abiding or not. They are neglecting UN mandates. So the mandate
Yeah.
was unfulfilled.
Yes. No, on that front, it is key that probably one of the ways to do this is to call for a peace conference, no? In which you bring all the parties, no, or all the parties that have uh, a way forward, a thought forward for Burma. The important thing is that you bring them together. But before a peace conference, you really have to distill very much all the positions, because you don't call for a conference if there's nothing to talk or there's not agreement. So there has to be a strong lobby power, you know, and member states have really there's a front door and a back door, because you cannot ignore the junta, even if nobody recognizes them. You cannot say they don't exist and that they exercise the control of the country. So it
Right,
would be very childish just to say, no, we don't talk to you. No, you have to talk to them. They are the, I would say they are the burglars in charge
right,
of the bank. So when you have like a situation like burglars get into the bank and take hostages, you just don't ignore them. You have to find ways to lobby from one way, from one other, no, the victims, the families, the police. So there are ways to get out of a crisis. And I would see this crisis something like that.
to UN officially. If the country they neglected UN mandate, how they record that? Before we do any action, before we go to alternative other things.
Well, that is sad because before they rejected it, there has been a lobby power. So the problem, John, is sometimes the lobby power has not been strong enough. Yeah.
Right,
No, because at the end, the junta has to give in. Mm. The conditions have to be such, and and the pressure, because also there are sanctions against Burma. So
right.
it goes like carrot and stick, because the economic and political sanctions have to play a role, and seems like these are not going. No, and then the members of the Security Council, which are the powerful ones, have to agree on how to deal with the junta. Some of the countries like United States, the United Kingdom, France, have blocked visas to members of the junta and their families. They have confiscated or frozen bank accounts. So all of these things really play. You have to put pressure. On one side is pressure, and on the other side is trying to have a constructive dialogue. Yeah, and of course the UN has been banned, but what is the role of the main player in Burma, which is China? What is China doing to have the UN accepted? Because China, as the main investor in Burma, as a member of the Security Council, as a country that is trying to play stronger and stronger role in the United Nations, they have to, we need to bring China in a more constructive way. So I am sure China could play a better role in all of this. And sometimes I find some of these UN operations are too much Western countries driven, no? And then there's more of a Western agenda. The West is quite far from Burma. The closest neighbors to Burma are India and China. Why don't we have an agenda which is a peace agenda, which is stronger driven by these two regional powers, China and India, especially China, and with elements of the Western powers? Because China would never agree at all the demands that, let's say, the United Kingdom, United States, France could put on the table, no, because they feel that it could also encroach their own interests and their own political situation of China itself. No, so China also has a number of problems. No, look at the situation with the Straits of Taiwan, or the situation in Hong Kong, or the situation with Uyghur minorities in the West. So China has also problems. Also, the UN has been critical of China on those fronts, no, but also driven as well by Western powers. But this one with Burma, it is exhausting. No, and it's so exhausting because nothing is happening and because the Burmese crisis is being ignored. So, in a nutshell, I would say to try to find a plan B in which China takes a stronger lead, but a stronger lead constructively, not about Chinese business, but as a Chinese way to stabilize Burma and stop the bloodshed perpetrated by the junta, and try to bring other levels of understanding, so that the country gets the stability it deserves and moves on and reconnects better to ASEAN. No, and China and ASEAN are also key players in Burma, and I think it will be a win-win situation if Burma is stabilized. And my recommendation there is really to have more of a Chinese-driven agenda, no, with elements of the Western values that are agreeable. And this will take some time, but it is a way in which everybody will win.
Right. So, as I mentioned, the UN mandate was broken. We can say UN mandate was broken, and UN mandate was rejected by
The
military
junta.
government, and they are absolutely they did not follow UN system, international rule and regulation. We can say that. So that's consequent, as you said, UN have a sanction. There are many sanctions. So it's carrot and stick. That so far UN did. And you suggest the other alternative is lobbying with the neighboring countries. As you said, China is also critical. So, and other Western countries are far away, and they will be reluctant to engage in Burmese crisis that much. I mean, they can also do if they have a will, but the point is, the Burmese crisis will be, with the good heart and good common sense view of dealing Burmese crisis will be known by the Burmese only. The Burmese
Yes.
know only how to do the best for Burmese people. Burmese people only Burmese people has a feeling how to make a good country for Burmese. It is very risky, or it's very hard to say other country, neighboring or any other country will have such feeling, a good heart
Yeah.
to rebuild, to build a good country for Burma, because that is not their own country, you know. So that is psychologically the human characteristics. So, however, in this context, you know, within the country has conflict. So the Aung San Suu Kyi group, military group, and ethnic group, all are fighting. So we cannot initiate peace building by ourselves. We need somebody outside organization has to ice breaking, you know, peace
Yes,
building ice
exactly.
breaking. They have to initiate at least. But in that program, it should be outside organization, but in that outside organization, the idea can be included the Burmese idea, you know, Burmese people idea. That will be perfect, you know, initiating peace building with the, we can say like the international society, including maybe different country, China or Asian country or any other Western country, selectively, because UN system is failed, you know. Now we have, in my proposal, we have to go with the selective country who can effectively deal and who are willing to deal Burmese issue. So selective country will be formed as a peace building group, and that peace building group should include Burmese people feeling their intention, their interest, you know, their vacuum, and military is also reluctant, and they eventually rejected the UN and ASEAN, uh, all this protocol, you know, engagement, they rejected. We don't know whether it will be good or not, but they rejected by military government. So now we need to do peace building, because now a lot of violations are happening, you know, human rights violation
Yes.
and ethnic cleansing, even genocide. So in that context, also you may know UNODC, you know, as
Yeah.
a UNODC, you can find a lot of now
Drugs and
Burma is the highest
producer of
opium
heroin.
producer. It is over
Yes,
Afghanistan right now. So
exactly.
and drug issue. In drug issue, who will be make decision? UNSC, or which UN department will decide that if the country violated UNODC rule and regulation? Who will decide? The UN Security Council?
Well, yeah, you've mentioned a few topics, so let me react.
Sure.
Right now, the crisis is such that nothing is happening, and everybody has retrieved into their own cocoon.
Right.
No, like everybody is sheltering their own ideas. No, the country's drowning in problems, in humanitarian crisis. No, there's a humanitarian crisis. The country is drowning in the need for food, for health, for jobs.
Right.
Poverty is ramping. Because of the levels of poverty and destitution, the illicit economy is taking over. And as you mentioned it very clearly, the balloon effect, as we call the drastic reduction of opium production in Afghanistan, has contributed to an unprecedented surge in the production of poppy cultivation and the production of heroin, but also of synthetic drugs, methamphetamines and other synthetic drugs are being produced in Burma, in territories that are not under the control of anybody. The poppy fields are mushrooming all over the country. So
Right.
that creates a world security issue, because who deals with the illicit economy are the international criminal groups. And the international criminal groups have the tentacles all over the world. It's not only Burma and the neighbors. The Burmese heroin can be shipped all over the world. The Burmese drugs can be shipped all over the world,
Right.
because there's the power of the illicit money that permeates that. And also because there are so many people without a job that they don't have any other option but to be part of the illicit economy. So if they don't find a job in a normal setting, they go and work for the criminal gangs out of necessity. So therefore, this is the suffering of the people that are forcing them to be engaged in things they wouldn't do normally. Um, Also, the ethnic cleansing continues, no, with a genocide approach to the Rohingyas and other minorities. The conflict gets entrenched, no, and this is what I say. Well, we know the problem is Burma, but when Burma's problems go spill over to the borders, then it becomes a regional problem. Because what happens to Thailand, to India, to Bangladesh, to Laos, no, if Burmese just escape violence, poverty, destitution, it becomes a problem of the neighbor country who has to host the problems, and they don't have the resources.
Right.
Because to get tens of thousands of people from one day to the other, I mean, you have to shelter them. Look, the situation at Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, the largest refugee camp in the world. So this is really a situation that didn't occur precisely in Bangladesh. It occurred in Burma and then spill over to a neighboring country. So therefore, this is why the neighboring countries, as being the first line of affectation of the problem, they have to be part of the equation. So you said also about the role of UNODC. It's key important, but UNODC is a technical office, and they produce information for the political constituencies of the UN, and through that, the constituencies of the UN, like the Security Council or the special rapporteurs, are the ones that have a saying on this point based on the recommendations of the Security Council. So on that front, John, I think it is important to allow um, this information to reach to the decision makers in the UN leadership, so that there are stronger elements to put pressure, because the illicit economy is causing a lot of trouble all over the world.
Right.
Drugs and crime and terrorism are serious matters, and they have to deal with, because it affects all over. It's not nice to see that Burma has become the #1 producer of heroin in the world. That indeed confirms how bad the situation in the country is.
Right.
So therefore, all of this, I would say, I will put together. We should not throw the towel. Of course, the junta has banned the UN, but the neighboring countries, and you have very powerful neighboring countries like India and China, they can sort of rewrap a UN proposal under their leadership and with the participation of other key UN members in trying to bring back the dialogue, because right now things have been left on their own. And we cannot allow that. There has to be a stronger way to move on and to bring, let's say, to lobby from within, because you mentioned very clearly it is the problem of the Burmese people. Yes, we have to act with a junta, with the Aung San Suu Kyi group, with the ethnic minorities. But where is the common denominator? I mean, we know that they are very different, but there has to be elements in which they agree. So let's start with those ones to glue as the glue to bring them, and around that try to make a proposal gradual. I mean, they are very much at the back of each other, but let's try to bring the elements that unite them and try to start to rebuild the peace. Burma has been at large for 70 years. That is not
Right,
possible. It's a country with a great potential. I see Burma has, if all well put together, has a great future and could be the star member of ASEAN. Is has always been the most developed country and economy after the Second World War in the region.
right,
And of course, it was when the British were there, they left a good education system, a good infrastructure, like any other. All of that has been disbanded.
right. So the thing, UNODC about drug and illicit things, that UNODC should report to UN Security Council, and then UN Security Council should seriously make decision about
Yes.
the crime. The Burma produce the highest opium and a lot of some illegal, also money laundering, and the
Oh yeah.
scam, a lot of crime. Burmese
Yeah,
authorities.
human trafficking, for falsified goods, synthetic drugs, plant-based drugs, smuggling of migrants,
Right,
extortion. No, all of those things, and that is the mandate of UNODC. All of this can be. I mean, I am telling you because this is what we've done in Afghanistan when Afghanistan was the number one producer. I mean, this was not just on the World Drug Report. This led to further, more intense interactions with member states to a point in which special conferences were made, or papers, blueprint presented to the Security Council for them, together with other elements to highlight the risk of these activities beyond Burma into the region and the wider world. So these are very serious matters. It's not that you can let a statistic go on its own. To be the world number one producer of heroin is something horrible. So that has to be put in the context in which the world has to react and something has to be done. And this is together with other of the problems that Burma has.
right,
Well, probably something should be in the making because this is something that has to be serious. I mean, the very good research that UNODC does, like the World Drug Report, leads. No, we do these reports because it contributes to further dialogue and research, and these elements that the World Drug Report or contain lead to other levels of discussion, and hopefully it would reach to a higher level at the Security Council to address the Burmese crisis also from that point of view, together with the other problems. I know the office was closed exactly for the reasons that we discussed, that the junta was, before UNODC used to have a representative in Burma.
and humanitarian, that's also UN mandate. So all these Human Rights Council, UNODC, and humanitarian, all these three departments and others, if they seriously report immediately to Security Council or Secretary General, they can make easier or more quick decision or more stronger decision because Burmese violated human rights and committed crime, and
Yeah.
they failed to protect the people. That UN Security Council can immediately make a quick decision. Is how do you think? Well, they do it?
Well, John, you see the Burmese crisis is multifaceted. It's not only one element. Are many,
Right,
as you said. Is a humanitarian? Is a illicit economy? Is a human rights abuse? Is the genocide?
right,
Is the exploitation? Is the lack of democracy? So all of that is like a time bomb. You see, you are just putting different elements to this very explosive bomb, and therefore it needs to be contained. It needs to be diffused, no, by taking the right actions on those. That is what is very important. That the Security Council gets all very clear, not only one of the crises, but a collection of the issues, so that it gives very much the sense of emergency to work immediately and to work closely and very thoughtfully about taking specific actions to resolve the crisis, because it's multifaceted, and the people of Burma, because it's a multifaceted crisis, they are suffering at different dimensions.
Right.
They don't have jobs. They don't have access to health, to food. They are living in a violent environment. There is within the country different groups who are taking the power on their own, and that is it's a failed state. And nothing can worse happen to a country than to become a failed state, because
Right.
nobody's in control. Everybody wants to do their own thing. And therefore, the citizens are being left at their own devices.
So, according to UN Security Council decision, they have only one decision in 2022, I guess. That is very simple statement, and that is not included a kind of action or serious, action on Burma. So it's so simple, that statement. So they need another resolution, right? UN security resolution for stronger and more serious and more effective. If they cannot do second resolution by UNSC, is their Secretary General can do or other option within UN mandate?
Well, you see, the Secretary General acts on the basis of what the member state requests. And one of the most urgent and the most sensitive spaces where member states discuss crises is the Security Council. And by a recommendation of the Security Council, the Secretary General has to take action.
I
The
see.
Secretary General cannot do things on his own if member states do not really propose a crisis, a situation to be dealt with. No, obviously, the Secretary General has the mandate, but it has to really be guided by the recommendations of UN bodies. And in that, we can bring all together the technical agencies feeding into a paper, a proposal that goes for discussion in the Security Council, and at that level, take the appropriate action. And in that level, the Security Council is key because you have China present, and China is your neighbor and your main investor. So therefore, they need really to be more open in a way that the Burmese crisis needs a better type of engagement.
So now, so far, Security Council did not make another resolution, and also Secretary General cannot do anything. So UN mandate is so far it's uh,
Deadlocked.
broke down.
Yeah,
UN
it's in a
mandate broke
deadlock.
down, and the military government rejected. It's broke down. ASEAN protocol also broke down, UN protocol also broke down. Then if, as we discussed, another option, because UN mandate is not working, ASEAN cannot do, and that system, alternative selective country, we will start, and I'm now proposing, and I'm start organizing and try to deal with selective country, including China, and we will make peace building plan. As we said, we need a blueprint. Because that will be done by Burmese, blueprint should be done by
Yes,
Burmese, because
it's their own people. Yeah.
other people cannot done. So I can initiate those blueprint, and international society, the group can be initiate the peace building with based on the blueprint. China, India, any other country, they cannot feel the same as Burmese people to build their own country because they will feel that is not my country, and even they may
Yeah.
not care. That's one reason why it's so long because China will never feel like Burmese. Why I should build the peace in this not my own country. Same in India and ASEAN. So we need a combination right now, Burmese expert with the international diplomacy.
I fully agree on that, John, because you see the spillover of the Burmese problems has gone beyond the borders within your country and has spilled over to the countries that you mentioned. And so everybody has a stake. But to solve this issue, you have to invest from within the country to really bring the actors to understand their positions and try to negotiate, because in the negotiation you cannot always get your poker. You have to give in and give out. So everybody has something to give in, something to give out, and then there is the process in a table in which they can be discussing. No, and then of course the price of a successful discussion is to get back the country you deserve. A prosperous Burma, a Burma with people who live in peace, who has an economy that flourishes, and that brings back the stability to that part of Southeast Asia.
Right. The
Yes,
blueprint should be done by expertise researcher.
I
That
agree. And it's a gradual process, and you have to be patient. All of these things don't get solved automatically. You have to invest good work, goodwill, and promote dialogue and share with all these parties that you mentioned what is the most they can give and what is what they cannot give in. So we have to understand all of that.
we
But
know
of course, yes,
they are very difficult because military will be 100% not agree. They will say,
yes,
we don't want this, we don't want. And opposition, Aung San Suu Kyi group will say, we don't like this, we don't. And any group will
yeah.
say, we should find out this the most common one. Nobody should expect 100%.
Well,
Nobody should expect.
I mean, that is the issue about crises. No, I mean, these are not easy to do,
Right.
but there's always a way, with patience and persistence, in which all parties have to, of course, sometimes they agree to disagree, but they have to find more spaces in which they can really move forward and negotiate. All the keys in a proper negotiation and good lobby, because sometimes with the lobby power, you can do many things
Right.
with the experts.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we will organize many country, especially who are interested. Without interest, we cannot invite them.
Yes, exactly. You have to have countries that do have a stake at this, and you see the Burmese diaspora is very much present in Europe, in North America, and they can also be influential. And I think a key element here, John, people like you, the Burmese diaspora, have to also play a role because they can see Burma from inside and outside, and
Right.
they understand their country from different dimensions. And of course, like you want the best from your country. You are sitting in Korea. You have very credible Burmese experts in North America, in Europe, in the Middle East, in
Thank you.
Thailand.
Thank you.
These people have also an interest.
Thank you, Caesar. It was pleasure to meet you today, and we have very productive discussion. I want you to participate in our peace building in the future.